Hello students, welcome back to the another video section of object-oriented programming language using C++. Today's topic is the basic concept of object-oriented programming. On the previous classes, we will learn about what is language, what is computer language, what are the different particularly types of programming languages. So let's begin with the current topic or today's topic is basic concept of object-oriented programming. In the previous class, we discussed about the basic difference between procedural and object-oriented programming language. So, the real-world programming or the real-world related programming widely implement the object-oriented programming concept. So, in this section, we discuss about some of the most important object-oriented features, or you can say the characteristics of the codes, that is class, object, abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, dynamic binding, and as well as message passing. So basically the object-oriented programming has four pillars, that is data abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and class and object. So first focus about this particular like simple diagram that having object-oriented programming that having four subsequent parts like the four subsequent characteristics or the pillars of the object-oriented programming system, that is encapsulation, polymorphism, inheritance, and abstraction. So let's begin with the first concept, that is called class. So basically a class is a user-defined data type, or you can say class is a template definition of the methods. That is, here the method is nothing, it is called functions and variables for a particular kind of object. In the previous class, we learned about what is class, what is object, little bit idea I just gave it to you. So basically class is just a template. Template is nothing, it is a blueprint or it is a framework which normally contains two type of things. One thing is called function, that is called method in this case, and another thing is called variables, which are normally widely implemented with the subsequent particular class. So every individual class must contain methods and as well as variables for a particular kind of object. And object is nothing, it is basically called instances of the class, or you can say the example of the subsequent class. Basically, in other words, class is a blueprint from which an individual object are created. So a class may contain one object or more than one object according to the requirement of the program. So that's why simple in this case, a person is basically called a class here, and every individual person having its own name. जैसे कि हम लोग ये बोल सकते हैं मैं टीचर हूँ, तो टीचर is normally called one class, and टीचर क्लासेस में एक से ज्यादा पर्सन है, जैसे कि मेरा नेम, my particular college name. So these all are like Vivekanand Patnaik or you can say Abhika ma'am or Raj sir. All the subsequent particularly names belongs to the subsequent class, and these are normally called the example of the class. So that's why a class is a data type, because as I said earlier, it is a user-defined data type. As you know that in C programming or in the previous particular section, first year, you learn about the procedural programming language, that is called C, and C having particularly two types of data types, that is one is global variable declaration, another is called local variable declaration. So basically to create a variable, it must require a type, because first of all, just simple example, int followed by num. So num is normally called the variable which is integer type. So class is also a user defined data type, So basically there are two type of like you can say the types are there. Like one is called user defined data type, another thing is called built-in type. So class is a user defined data type, or you can say it is a data type which is basically called has its own members, that is called data member and as well as member function. So every individual class must having its own attribute and as well as behavior. So in this case, the attributes are nothing, the fields which defined inside the class, that is called data, and the functions or the member functions are normally called the behavior of the subsequent class. So it is the basic building block of an object-oriented programming in C++. So any object-oriented programming concept or any other object-oriented programming language must use this particular concept, that is called class. Either it may be C++ or it may be Java or any other object-oriented programming language widely implemented or widely focused on or based on the concept of class. So that's why the members of the class are accessed in the program language by creating an instance of the subsequent class. So every individual class must have its at least one object, and object is nothing as I say earlier. It is basically called data plus function or data plus method. So every individual class having two specific sections. The first section is all about the data section, and the second section is all about the like function section, or you can say the method section. So basically some important properties of the classes are: first is class is a user defined data type. Second, a class contains members like data members and as well as member functions, because a class is like just like a member. All the subsequent thing which is defined inside the like class is basically called member of the subsequent thing, or you can say the property of the subsequent thing, means property of the subsequent class. So every individual class having its own property, that is one thing is called data, that is also known as data member, and the next one is called the functions or the procedures which are normally widely defined inside the subsequent class because it belongs to the subsequent class. That's why it is basically called member functions. And data members are the variables which is defined inside the class. So what is actually variable? What are the different types of variables there? ये हम लोग कमिंग क्लासेस में ये सब चीज हम लोग जानेंगे, लेकिन सबसे पहले जो क्लास डिफाइन होता है, द क्लास आल्सो always have a section called data section, or you can say the variable section, and the member functions are the methods or the procedures that are used to manipulate the data. So basically the data members are private in nature because of the certain security concerns, and the member functions are public in nature. So that's why whenever the object can access the property of the subsequent class, it can directly access the member functions instead of data members. So that's why data members define the property of the class, whereas the member functions define the behavior of the class. Take a simple example. मान लो जैसे कि हम लोग एक पर्टिकुलरली ऑटोमोबाइल या कार का एग्जांपल ले रहे हैं, तो इन दिस केस कार आर नॉर्मली कंसीडर्ड एज अ क्लास. So as you know that there are many cars with different particularly manufacturers, different particularly names and as well as brands. जैसे कि हम लोग अगर एक क्लास का एग्जांपल ले रहे हैं, तो क्लास अगर आपका जैसे कि कार हो रहा है, कार एक आपका क्लास की कैटेगरी में आ रहा है, तो एवरी इंडिविजुअल कार, हर एक कार में जैसे कि डिफरेंट कार्स अवेलेबल है मार्केट में, डिफरेंट ब्रांड नेम से या डिफरेंट मैन्युफैक्चरर से, बट all the subsequent particularly like cars which are available in the market will share the same common properties. So हर एक particularly कार में similar properties available होता है, चाहे वो किसी भी ब्रांड से या किसी भी नेम को बिलोंग कर रहा है. So that's why the common properties like have four wheels, जैसे कि चार व्हील्स होता है, स्पीड लिमिट उसमें होता है, एक्सेलरेशंस का कंसेप्ट होता है, जैसे एक्सेलरेटर यूज होता है, ब्रेक्स यूज होता है, या माइलेज रेंज, जैसे कि माइलेज कंट्रोल करने के लिए सर्टेन पर्टिकुलरली इक्विपमेंट्स यूज होता है, वगैरह वगैरह. मींस दैट इज बेसिकली द कॉमन particularly properties are normally called the four wheels, speed limit, mileage range, etc. So in this case a class has data member and as well as member functions, as I say in this particular slide. So the data members are the data variables and the member functions are basically related with the functions. So इससे थोड़ी देर पहले मैं बताया था जैसे कि हर एक क्लास में दो सब्सिक्वेंट सेक्शन होता है या दो सेक्शन होता है। एक सेक्शन आपका डेटा होता है या डेटा सेक्शन होता है, दूसरा आपका नॉर्मली आपका फंक्शनिंग सेक्शन होता है या जैसे कि मेथड सेक्शन होता है। So every individual class must contain at least these two particular sections while normally creating a class. So एक example में this particular example normally consider about this particular example. Car is normally called the subsequence particularly class. Here class is basically called car or car is a class. And the data members are basically called the speed limit, like the mileage, etc. देन आपका मेंबर फंक्शंस कौन सा होगा? मेंबर फंक्शन मतलब व्हेन यू अप्लाई सर्टेन ब्रेक, जैसे कि ब्रेक एक इक्विपमेंट होता है या ब्रेक एक पर्टिकुलर कंपोनेंट होता है। व्हेन यू अप्लाई ब्रेक फॉर स्टॉप ए पर्टिकुलर कार, so this particularly like applying the brake or using of the brake is basically called the functioning of the subsequence particularly class, or you can say functioning of the subsequence class. As well as when you increase or decrease the speed of the subsequence class, so it is also related with like the member functions. जैसे कि मैं पहला और प्रीवियस पर्टिकुलरली वीडियो क्लासेस में या जैसे कि वीडियो सेक्शन में मैं बताया था, मान लो जैसे कि एक ह्यूमन बीइंग या जैसे कि एक पर्सन आपका एक क्लास हो गया है, तो एवरी इंडिविजुअल पर्सन लाइक आई एम द पर्सन, माय नेम इज विवेक एंड विवेक इज नॉर्मली कॉल्ड द इंस्टेंस ऑफ द पर्सन, लाइक यू कैन से द एग्जांपल ऑफ द पर्सन दैट इज बेसिकली कॉल्ड एज ऑब्जेक्ट। एंड I have certain particularly attributes and as well as behavior. Some physical components है and some logical components है. So the functioning part also है. जैसे कि while I am talking certain thing. So talking आपका क्या हो गया है? जैसे कि functioning of the subsequent thing. तो talk किसके थ्रू करते हैं? जैसे कि हम लोग mouth के थ्रू. तो viewing या seeing या जो भी होता है, view जो हम लोग करते हैं. So that is by the help of the eye. And listening is normally called another function which is related with the subsequence class. We are using the subsequence variable, or you can say the data member is by using the ear. So ear, mouth, like nose, eye, these all such things are basically called, you can say, the data members. And by using or by manipulating these particular data members, we are normally producing certain functionality or certain behavior of the subsequent thing, and that particular thing is basically called the functions of the subsequent class. The next section is all about the object. Object is nothing, it is an instance of a class, because whenever a class is created and after that we can create an object, by the help of the subsequence object we can use all the subsequence property of the class outside. So अगर हम लोग कोई भी क्लास का प्रॉपर्टी को आउटसाइड एक्सेस करना चाहते हैं, आउटसाइड यूज करना चाहते हैं, so for that we must create an object of the subsequence thing or object of the subsequence class. So जब ऑब्जेक्ट आपका क्रिएट होता है, वो आपको आपका जो क्लास, जिस क्लास को वो बिलोंग कर रहा है, and by the help of the subsequence object we can access the property, and as well as after creating the object a class is memory allocated. Means class is basically called a user defined data type. So जब आपका ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट होता है, क्लास के लिए मेमोरी एलोकेट होता है, and inside the subsequence class it having the data members and as well as member functions. So हर एक पर्टिकुलरली प्रॉपर्टी जो क्लास में है या क्लास को बिलोंग कर रहा है, उसके लिए मेमोरी एलोकेशन होता है. So that's why it is an entity with characteristics and behavior. So it having its own attributes and as well as own characteristics and as well as its own functioning part, that is called the behavior, that are used in an object-oriented programming. So the object-oriented programming is completely based on objects, yeah, one object, yeah, more than one object. So that's why an object is the entity that is created to allocate the memory. So whenever, as I say in this particular section, like whenever the object is created, it creates memory for the subsequent class. So it is basically called allocation memory for the class and as well as its property. And after that, by the help of the class object, we can access the subsequent property of that class outside which. And a class when defined does not have memory chunks. It normally does not contain any memory itself, because class आपका automatically आपका memory allocate नहीं कर पाएगा. Then after that which will be allocated as soon as the object are created. जैसे कि अभी थोड़ी देर पहले मैं बताया, ऑब्जेक्ट जब क्रिएट होता है उसके बाद ही आपका मेमोरी आपका allocate होता है किसका? क्लास का. So that's why the most significant and the most important like term, or you can say the entity which is widely implemented in object oriented programming, that is basically called object. So that's why The object is basically called the instance of a class, and that is basically called the example of the subsequence class. And the next in the list, that is called abstraction. Abstraction is basically called, it is the process of hiding irrelevant details from the user. So every individual particular like class normally contain some some particularly contains or some properties. So basically the use of or the abstraction is the process is of hiding the unnecessary details, the unwanted details, or you can say the basic like you can say the essential. It normally focus about the essential particular characteristics or essential details of the subsequence particularly user. So that data abstraction or data hiding is the concept of hiding data and showing only relevant data to the final user. So अभी थोड़ी देर पहले जैसे मैं बताया था, जब आपका एक क्लास डिफाइन होता है, क्लास में आपका दो सेक्शन होता है, जैसे कि एक पहला फर्स्ट सेक्शन आपका डेटा सेक्शन होता है, सेकंड सेक्शन आपका नॉर्मली फंक्शन सेक्शन होता है, या जैसे कि जिसको हम लोग डेटा मेंबर एंड मेंबर फंक्शन बोलते हैं। डेटा हमेशा C++ या ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग में बेसिकली C++ में वो प्राइवेट नेचर होता है। प्राइवेट मतलब आपका वो नॉर्मली हाइड फॉर्म में रहता है, उसको डायरेक्टली आप आउटसाइड एक्सेस कर नहीं सकते। लेकिन ऑन द अदर साइड the functions which are defined inside the class having public in nature. Public मतलब उसको हम लोग outside directly access कर सकते हैं by the help of the class object. So that's why for secure for the you can say the security concern, the data is always hide. So that's why abstraction means showcasing only the required things, the essential things to the particularly outside world while hiding the details. So that's why abstraction allows us to expose limited data and functionality of objects publicly and hide the actual implementation. So basically, it is all about the hiding the irrelevant particularly details to the final user or to the normally related user. So that's why every individual particular class having some features. If you want to hide certain details from the or you can say hide certain details to the other user, we are normally widely implemented the abstraction concept. So for example, so basically the abstraction is like the means of displaying only essential information and hiding the subsequent details. हम लोग जैसे कि जो essential information को हम लोग यूज करते हैं, तो वो आपका नॉर्मली सिर्फ आउटर सेक्शन होता है, जो उसका जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन सेक्शन होता है, जो इनर सेक्शन होता है, वो हमेशा हम लोग से हाइड रहता है। जैसे कि इससे पहले हम लोग कार का एग्जांपल लिए थे, तो यहाँ पे मैं नॉर्मली उसी पर्टिकुलर एग्जांपल को कंटिन्यू कर रहा हूँ। जैसे कि एक पर्टिकुलर पर्सन, a man like while driving a car, the man only knows that how to press the accelerator will increase the subsequent speed, and as well as how to apply the subsequent brake which is available with the car will stop the car. So अगर हम लोग एक कार को ड्राइव कर रहे हैं, तो हम लोग को इतना यूज होना चाहिए, जैसे कि हम लोग स्टीयरिंग को मूवमेंट करते हैं, या जैसे एक्सीलरेटर को हम लोग प्रेस करते हैं, तो हम लोग जब प्रेस करते हैं वो उसका पर्टिकुलर स्पीड जो होता है वो इंक्रीज होता है, जब हम लोग उसको रिलीज करते हैं तो इट इज नॉर्मली डिक्रीजिंग। तो स्पीड लिमिट जो होता है या स्पीड को इंक्रीज या डिक्रीज करने के लिए कार में एक कंपोनेंट होता है जिसको एक्सीलरेटर बोलते हैं। जैसे कि while we are using to stop a car, so we are normally using the subsequent particular component called brake. So these two things are basically like the outer part. When you press the accelerator or when you press the brake, it is normally the functioning part, that is you have to increase or decrease the subsequent particularly car speed, or you can just stop the car. So but we do not know or we does not know the inner mechanism of the subsequence car or implementation of its particularly like properties. So इसके मतलब how the subsequence particularly car work, मतलब जब हम लोग ब्रेक देते हैं तो कार स्टॉप होता है, वो स्टॉप कैसे होता है ये हम लोग को कुछ लेना देना, because it is basically for the inner mechanism which is normally like used in the subsequence car. So we are normally focusing about the essential characteristics. मतलब हम लोग को इतना पता होना चाहिए, एक्सीलरेटर को दबाने से आपका कार मतलब कार का स्पीड इंक्रीज होगा, ब्रेक को दबाने से आपका कार वहां पे स्टॉप होगा, या उसको स्टॉप करने के लिए हम लोग को ब्रेक को यूज करना पड़ता है। तो बट हाउ द सबसिक्वेंस मैकेनिज्म वर्क, ये हम लोग एक्चुअली हम लोग को कोई जानने की कुछ जरूरत नहीं। तो दैट्स व्हाई बेसिकली इन दिस पर्टिकुलरली like the hide of the inner mechanism is related with the abstraction. So that's why it is called the data abstraction. how the particular function work does not know, but because every individual function एक functions को functioning करने के लिए data member की जरूरत पड़ता है या data की जरूरत पड़ता है। तो data हमेशा वो hide form में रहता है function में, because हम लोग functions का outer section को use करते हैं। implementation जो part होता है, जो coding part होता है, background में जो रहता है, वो हम लोग उसको कैसे use हुआ है, जैसे कि standard user को पता नहीं चलता है how the subsequence particularly mechanism work, so वो सिर्फ outer sections को या जैसे कि user interface के focus। And normally fourth in the list, that is called encapsulation. Encapsulation is nothing, it is basically called the process of combining data and as well as function into a single unit like container. So every individual class must contain two subsequence particularly properties, like one thing is called its data member or another thing is called the member function. So encapsulation is called hiding of the data. So it is basically combine the particular data and as well as functions to a single unit. This is to avoid the access of private data members or private members from outside the class. If you hide certain thing, if a particular like property of the class defined as private, because private अगर एक बार आप डिक्लेयर किए तो वो क्लास के अंदर ही यूज होगा, वो आउटसाइड क्लास यूज नहीं हो पाएगा। So but basically to avoid the access of the private data member, जैसे कि मेरे पास कुछ प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी है, मैं उसको शेयर नहीं करना चाहता हूँ, अगर मैं शेयर नहीं कर रहा तो वो हाइड मोड में ही रहेगा, तो दैट्स व्हाई वो आउटसाइड एक्सेस नहीं हो पाएगा। To achieve this particular thing, encapsulation is widely implemented. So we make all data members of the class like private and create public functions. Using them we can get the values from these data members or set the value of this particular data member. So यहाँ पे एक लॉजिक यूज होता है, जैसे कि जो भी डेटा मेंबर्स हम लोग यूज करते हैं क्लास के अंदर, उसको हम लोग प्राइवेट पर्टिकुलर सेक्शन में डालते हैं, मतलब वो आपका नॉर्मली आउटसाइड डायरेक्टली आउटसाइड एक्सेस नहीं हो पाएगा बाय यूजिंग ऑब्जेक्ट और विदाउट यूजिंग ऑब्जेक्ट। एंड जो मेंबर फंक्शन जो होता है वो आपका जो फंक्शन डिफाइन होता है क्लास के अंदर, उसको हम लोग पब्लिक डिफाइन करते हैं, बिकॉज़ object can directly access the property of the subsequent class, that is basically called function, or you can say the member functions. So member functions are basically manipulate the data members which are defined as private. So अगर हम लोग encapsulations का एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल दे रहे हैं, मान लो एक particularly organization में different departments हैं, like one company having different sections or different departmental sections like admin section, sales section, marketing section, so and so, एक से ज्यादा डिपार्टमेंट आपका अवेलेबल है, ठीक। अगर जैसे कि हम लोग यहाँ पे बोलेंगे एडमिन सेक्शन का काम क्या है, तो वो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर या एडमिनिस्ट्रेशंस के हिसाब से वो काम करेगा। फाइनेंस सेक्शंस का क्या होगा, वो फाइनेंशियल ट्रांजैक्शंस का फुल डिटेल्स मेंटेन करेगा। लाइक सेल्स सेक्शन इज ऑल अबाउट हाउ द पर्टिकुलर सेल्स मेड और कितना सेल हुआ है, ये सब चीज उसको उसके पर्टिकुलर डिपार्टमेंट के अंदर। सो यहाँ पे लॉजिक ये होता है, जैसे कि एनकैप्सुलेशन का यूज कैसे होता है ये मैं बता रहा हूं आपको। बेसिकली financial section wants certain like data or you can say monthly report of a subsequent month from the sales department. So the financial section directly or normally you can say it does not actually assess the subsequent particularly like data which is available in the sales department, it actually directly ये assess नहीं कर सकता है। So उसके लिए उसको क्या करना पड़ेगा, if I want certain particular, if I am working in a particularly finance section, I want a particular monthly report of the sales from the sales section. So first of all I should make a request or made a particular you can say request to the subsequent section that is called sales. So यहाँ पे क्या होगा, जैसे कि आपका फाइनेंशियल सेक्शन का जो भी पर्टिकुलर पर्सन है या जो भी हेड है वो एक रिक्वेस्ट जनरेट करेंगे किसको, सेल्स डिपार्टमेंट में या सेल्स सेक्शन में जो हेड है। So after that the sales sections can provide data exclusively to the like financial section. So you may not directly access the property of one section to the another section. So that's why in this case this particular concept, yeah, normally you can say the sales section hiding certain thing or encapsulating certain things. So this basically concept is all about the encapsulation or you can say the data encapsulation. So that's why in the last particular point, that is in the third point, to achieve encapsulation we make all data members of a class private. अगर हम लोग जैसे कि डेटा को और फंक्शंस को कंबाइंड फॉर्म में रखना चाहते हैं तो बेसिकली क्या होगा, हम लोग को ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग यूजिंग C++। C++ में हम लोग को क्या करना पड़ेगा, जैसे कि जो डेटा मेंबर्स होगा या जो वेरिएबल्स डिफाइन होगा क्लास के इनसाइड, उसको हम लोग डेटा मेंबर बोलते हैं, उसको हम लोग को प्राइवेट करना मतलब डिक्लेयर करना जरूरी है। बिकॉज अगर एक बार हम लोग उसको प्राइवेट डिक्लेयर कर दे तो वो पर्टिकुलर सेक्शन या जो डेटा आपका प्राइवेट डिफाइंड हुआ है वो डायरेक्टली आउटसाइड वर्ल्ड या आउटसाइड एक्सेस नहीं हो पाएगा। And the next thing what? So basically, the functions which are normally created inside the class should declare as public. मतलब उसको कोई भी access कर सकता है। So every individual class का जो property होता है वो आपका normally object के through access होता है। So that's why by this particular thing, using them, we can get the values from these data members or set the value to these particular data members. मतलब हम लोग directly लाइक डेटा मेंबर को या वेरिएबल को एक्सेस नहीं कर पाएंगे, लेकिन उसको एक्सेस कैसे करेंगे, फंक्शन के थ्रू। तो व्हाइल एक्चुअली वी यूजिंग द फंक्शन वी कैन एक्चुअली मैनिपुलेट द डेटा व्हिच इज डिफाइंड एज प्राइवेट, एंड दिस पर्टिकुलरली कंसेप्ट इज ऑल अबाउट द एनकैप्सुलेशन। So I hope so. There are another 3 to 4 points there in object oriented programming. In this section we discuss about class, object, abstraction and encapsulation. On the next video we will discuss about the next particularly like like you can say the characteristics or normally the rest of characteristics we will discuss about the next video. So I hope so you all are watching this and try to understand this concept. It is most important, particularly section of object oriented programming. Thank you.